Hey guys, in this video, we're going to talk about mountain barriers and how they relate to climate. So, this is a map of the US, okay? But if we look closer over here near California, we'll see that these are the Rocky Mountains. These are really large and beautiful mountains in the western United States. Also, notice if you look even closer that on the left side of the mountains, Rocky Mountains, we have rainforests, but on the right side, we have a desert. Let's talk about why. So we call this the orographic effect. And the orographic effect is how climate is influenced based on which side of the mountain we're looking at or talking about. So mountain ranges actually have a huge effect on the climate of a region. So remember how clouds form. Clouds form through rise, they expand, they cool and condense. And for the orographic effect to happen, we need a body of water next to the mountain. Okay, that's necessary. You need a mountain, you need water. So the first thing that happens is air moves from the water towards this mountain. And since air is moving from the water to the mountain, it's actually bringing moisture with it. It's bringing some humidity with it, right? And then the mountain forces the air to move upwards. So the air is rising, and as the air is rising, it cools down and expands, right? It expands and cools. And as it expands and cools, it starts to condense. And starts to form clouds and also rain, right? So we call this the windward side, the side where the wind is coming from and the wind is going over the water. And in the windward side, we actually have a climate that is cold and it's wet. Okay, cold because the air is rising and we have lots of showers going on, and that's also why it's wet. Okay. So, what about this side of the mountain? Well, the air already rose. It already showered all over the windward side where the wind is coming from. Now the air lost all of its water, right? And now it's gonna start to sink this way. Okay, so it's not being forced to rise anymore. So it starts to go down, and as it goes down, it starts to warm up. Yes, warm air rises, but remember, we're talking about a convection current here, right? So the sun creates warm air does rise, but remember, it eventually does cool down and then it sinks, and then once it sinks, it starts to warm up again and then rises again. And that's what's happening here. Warm air rises, it cools, and then once it cools, it sinks, and as it sinks, it warms up again, and eventually it will rise back up. But this time, as it warms up and sorry, it as the cool air starts to sink and warm up, it doesn't have any more water, right? So that's why this area is actually really dry. We call this the leeward side or the rain shadow side of the mountain. And this side of the mountain is pretty warm because the air starts to warm up down here. And it's pretty dry because there's no moisture. So remember, the windward side is pretty rainy, so it's cool and wet. The warm air is rising and becoming cooler. And in the leeward or rain shadow side, the air is warm because as the cool air is sinking, it starts to warm up near the surface, but it's dry because there's no water. And go ahead and write this down in your notes. Some factors of climate, or one of the factors for climate, is mountain barriers. And write this down in your diagram as well. On the side where the wind is coming from, we call this the windward side, and it's cooler and wetter. And on the other side, we call this the leeward or the rain shadow side. This side is warmer and drier. So go ahead and pause this video, try number 17. On the map, draw one arrow in the box located on the Andes Mountains to indicate the surface planetary wind direction that helped produce the um, Atacama Desert. So draw an arrow to show which way the wind is blowing to form this desert. The correct answer is this or this. So you can get one credit if you draw either a straight or a curved arrow that is pointing from towards the west side, right? Or even the northwest. But if you draw more than one arrow, all those arrows need to be correct. So how come the arrows are pointing this way? Well, because this side is the desert, right? Remember, the leeward side is the dry side. This is where all the deserts form, and this is the side where the wind is going towards, right? So if we have a mountain, the desert side will be on one side, and the non-desert, the wet and cold side will be by the water. So that's really what's happening here. Okay. So the wind is coming from the water area over here. It's going this way and forming a desert. Notice the wind never goes on the opposite side of the desert, direction of the desert. It goes towards the desert area. Try number 18, pause this video. The map below shows two locations labeled A and B, separated by a mountain range. The locations are at the same elevation. The arrow represents the direction of the prevailing winds. Compared to the climate at location A, the climate at location B is most likely what? The correct answer is A, warmer and drier. Remember, if we have an ocean, the wind is coming this way, A must be the windward side, and it must be cold and wet, and this is where all the rain must be happening on this side. And then the air rises above the mountains and sinks this way. And remember, B is the leeward or rain shadow side, and B must be warmer and drier. That's why the correct answer is A. So in the next video, we're going to talk about ocean currents and climate.